Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is in custody in New York following his dramatic capture in a U.S. military operation in Caracas on Saturday. President Donald Trump says the people of Venezuela are now free of Maduro's dictatorship. Venezuela's vice president has demanded the U.S. send Maduro back, calling him the rightful president. Maduro and his wife, who was also captured, were brought to the Stewart Air Force Base several hours ago. The couple face federal charges of narcoterrorism and cocaine importation. Maduro was taken to a detention center escorted by drug enforcement officers. Now, with Maduro in custody, President Trump says the United States will govern Venezuela for now. His announcement has divided opinions. Al Jazeera's Patty Culhane joins us from the U.S. Capitol. So, Patty, you're there. Walk us through what we've seen over the past few hours.
Well, really, I think Americans are just tuning in to find out what happened because, remember, this is the holiday period in the United States. New Year's Eve just happened. People aren't going back to work for another day or so. And in this time frame, people tend to just tune out, which is why governments tend to do release information. We believe this raid was supposed to take place possibly a couple days ago, but weather was a concern. There's some reports of that. So I don't think it's really sunk in for most Americans yet, because, again, many people simply don't even know that this has happened. So really, I think what's going to be critical is not just what we hear from Republican lawmakers. We've seen the leadership come out and say that they agree with this raid. The question is going to be, what does the Republican base say about this once everyone learns the news? Because don't forget, this is a president who came to office promising America first, no more foreign interventions.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that in a second. But first, so Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, is now in detention on U.S. soil. What happens now? What are the next steps?
Well, one, we need to figure out where his wife, Celia Flores, is, but he will most likely, as Kimberly mentioned, be brought before a federal judge in Manhattan on Monday. He will be asked to make a plea, whether guilty or not guilty. The way things work in this country is he can ask for, if he can either hire his own attorney, or if he doesn't have one, a public defender could be appointed to represent him. And then he'll make his plea, and the judge will decide if he stays in custody, which seems very likely. And then the process begins. And it's federal court. It takes a very long time in this country, months, perhaps even as much as a year, because so much evidence needs to be gathered. But he is facing he and his wife are facing very serious charges under the indictment that was unsealed just hours ago.
All right, Patty, stand by for a second. We want to just run our viewers through some of the reaction to all of this from U.S. lawmakers. So first, we'll start with independent, the left-wing Democratic Alliance Senator Bernie Sanders. Listen.
Trump's attack on Venezuela will not make the United States and the world safer. Quite the contrary. This brazen violation of international law gives a green light to any country on earth that may wish to attack another nation to seize their resources or change their governments. This is the horrific logic of force that Putin used to justify his brutal attack on Ukraine. Let's make no mistake about it. This is rank imperialism. It recalls the darkest chapters of U.S. interventions in Latin America, which have left a terrible legacy. It will and should be condemned by the democratic world.
Okay, so that's one side of the political divide in America. On the other side, while most Republicans are backing Trump, some are coming out against the capture of Maduro. So this is what Trump ally turned critic, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, wrote on X. She wrote, in part, Mexican cartels are primarily and overwhelmingly responsible for killing Americans with deadly drugs. If U.S. military action and a regime change in Venezuela was really about saving American lives from deadly drugs, then why hasn't the Trump administration taken action against Mexican cartels? And Republican Congressman Thomas Massie posted on X. He wrote in part, AG, again referring to the Attorney General Pam Bondi and others, legally characterized attack in Venezuela as arrest with military support. Meanwhile, Trump announces he's taken over the country and will run it until he finds someone suitable to replace him. So, Patty, back to you now. So, How much of a problem is this politically for Trump, given that a big chunk of his MAGA base is against all of these, as you point out, foreign military interventions?
Well, it depends on how big a chunk that is. So obviously, we've heard from the Republican leadership, the prominent Dems. The rest of the caucus is what's going to matter here, and they will react in large part how the base reacts. Just to put this in perspective, Donald Trump and his presidency is right now, if you look at polls, the lowest approval rating he has ever had, whether it was his first term, his second term. He is facing complaints from his voters over farmers being hurt by the tariffs. The economy is weak. The job market's weak. Healthcare has increased. Everything is much more. There's an affordability crisis in this country when it comes to the cost of groceries, the cost of housing. So he is a very deeply unpopular president. The only thing that's been keeping him propped up is that core Republican base. He still has approval with people who label themselves as Republicans. So the politicians in this country are going to be looking to see how those people react. If they see a growing split, that could impact how they react. Obviously, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tom Massey, Representative Tom Massey, they've been critics of Donald Trump. But it also matters because Venezuela gets a vote here. The rest of the world gets a vote here. This is now owned by President Donald Trump. He has not made it clear exactly how he intends to run the country. Putting troops in Venezuela would be hugely unpopular. So it really depends on how the American people react, how the world reacts, and what happens next.
All right, Patty Culhane there with a view from Washington. Patty, thank you.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.